So good evening, everyone at Millennium School and on Zoom. I'm Kristen Lass, the town manager with the town of Westford. Welcome to our facilities assessment and master planning process community conversation number 1. Pleased to introduce you to the members in the room. We have Rebecca Hopkins, Jeff McElravy, and Matt Salad from Tecton Architects. And then we also have Tom Wimberg, who's on the Permanent Town Building Committee, Jeff Goodwin, who's our Facilities Director for Town and School, and Mike Edwards, who is our Assistant Town Manager for Strategic Operations. I'm going to give a few-minute overview of why we're here and what we're looking for input today and for future conversations, and then turn it over to Tecton. They have some amazing graphics to show you the progress that they've made on this facilities assessment, and then we actually have some fun activities. If you want to get your smartphone ready, we have some QR codes that will lead you to some polling and activities that we've test drove. I had a lot of fun doing it, so I hope you do as well, and we're going to use that information to further our conversation. So, just to set the stage for residents and those viewing, I've been the town manager in Westford for almost 2 years now, and throughout my early onboarding meetings with department heads, boards, and committees, it became clear to me that the town didn't necessarily have a comprehensive building maintenance and capital plan or a maintenance budget in place. And what we are doing today is working to develop that. We've been continuing and starting to keep proactive maintenance plans through Jeff Goodwin's team, and also on the fleet side with Kyle Fox, our DPW director, and our public safety departments. But we have a long way to go. So we want to see that the outcome of this facilities assessment is to develop a long-term maintenance strategy that includes planned maintenance on our existing buildings and systems, and prioritizes taking care of our existing assets over constructing new, where and when that makes sense. We really have a new team in place, so we'd ask for a little bit of grace. Jeff has been with us for 2.5, almost 3 years, Kyle Fox 2 years, Mike almost a year, and myself almost 2 years. And we're now developing a ticketing system that we use to document and maintain all of our maintenance performed. We schedule maintenance now, and we schedule our repairs, and we use that as a budgeting tool. And you'll see that throughout our budget hearings that we're having this month. We've said repeatedly that we want to prioritize the use of efficiency in our existing facilities and maintain what we have over constructing new, again, when possible. And we're using Tecton as a guide for us to do that. I also want to put a nod to the select board and town manager goals for fiscal 25. We always use those goals to guide our work. And goal number 11 for fiscal 25 is to complete the space planning and capital needs assessment, which we're here tonight to continue to do. We want to determine potential future space needs for our town, make recommendations to optimize current space to meet the needs of our current and future employees, and provide ways to develop workspace that's aligned with the town's mission and goals. We see that the study will also identify our necessary maintenance, both deferred, current, and also future, and projects that we're ensuring we're maintaining our building assets. We want to coordinate with the school committee on their capital planning to ensure that the two groups are aligned for our future needs. Also, a goal of the select board and the town manager is to develop a more robust and comprehensive capital plan to include all of our assets, not limited to fleet, technology, infrastructure, facilities, and more. So on June 6th of 2023, the select board authorized the allocation of $144,000 in ARPA funds to develop this facilities assessment and master plan, which is envisioned to be one of the building blocks for the townwide strategic plan as our long-term capital investment tool. We issued a request for proposals, and Tecton Architects was one of those architectural firms that responded. We felt that they offered the most advantageous project approach and had the most relevant and applicable experience for the town's needs. Most encouraging from Tecton's approach was their willingness to help the town develop a facilities inventory and investment model that could be easily modified, updated, and expanded in future years by town staff. So it would not be their ownership, it would be our ownership. This will also enable us to scale up the model to incorporate other capital assets such as infrastructure, technology, and vehicles, as well as information from the recent schools facility study by SMMA, and to build a more comprehensive long-term capital improvement plan, CIP, facilitating better long-term planning and investments for the town. So Tecton will be working with us and has been working with us to incorporate other existing and ongoing facilities planning efforts into their final plan. They have not specifically looked at the fire stations. Fire headquarters was built in 2018. Rogers Station was in the early 2000s. And the Namnasset Fire Station is currently under a separate study through Context Architecture. The Cameron Senior Center was renovated several years ago and is under a separate study with Context Architecture, but Tecton is taking those items under consideration in their use. The schools went under their separate study of SMMA. Tecton also has a copy of that and is reviewing that. And then we also own Town Farm at 35 Town Farm Road. Most of you know that that is under agreement for affordable housing in the food pantry, so that's not included in this study. And finally, the Westford Museum is one of our facilities that's well treasured. We recently are adding Tecton under that scope for an existing conditions assessment and exploring the feasibility of bringing that building up to modern standards and ADA accessibility. So Tecton is also working concurrently with our American with Disabilities Act transition plan to understand where our facilities are deficient for accessibility, and they'll be incorporating that data into their study. So I really want to thank you all for coming tonight. I think, as I said before, you'll find the activities educational and engaging. And we'll also be describing to you and other members of the public how you can get involved in the coming months, as tonight is not the last time to engage. So with that, I will turn it over to Tecton for their presentation and their activities.
Great, thank you. So, thank you for that introduction. So one thing to note is that tonight is intended to be a conversation, and we use that word intentionally. So although we'll have a presentation, we have activities. If there's something that you'd like to bring up, we encourage you to kind of interrupt us, stop us where you are. We want this to be a conversation, so if you have thoughts or ideas or questions, please just chime in as we go along.
And I'll just add that we're also monitoring the chat in the Zoom call, so
Yes.
if anybody has any comments that's attending remotely, please feel free to add anything to the chat, and we'll address it as those questions come up.
Yes. Kristen, do you have anything?
I was going to say
Great.
exactly what Matt said.
Awesome. So from an agenda standpoint, I think we kind of already covered team introduction, so I'll jump over that quickly. We'll do a high-level process overview. I think Kristen gave a good in-depth kind of synopsis of what we've done. We've kind of broken it up into kind of 4 major pieces. We'll review all of our work completed to date, so we'll talk about kind of the first 2 steps of this 4-step process, and then kind of where we are today. And this is where we'll have a few activities to kind of seek your direct feedback on some particular items that we'd like to hear directly from you, your thoughts, and then we'll open it up. Again, if you have questions along the way, please ask them. So you already know who we are, so we will skip right over that. For a process overview, so the 4 pieces that we've talked about as a part of this kind of facilities assessment and master plan is the existing conditions component, the programming and space needs, the master plan piece, and then the capital improvements, or that CIP plan going into the future. So for the existing conditions study, we've looked at multiple facilities across the town, and we look at, not only do we look at kind of the overall building structure and the systems and what their useful life and the condition, we look at maintenance, we look at also operational deficiencies. We then layer in information about space needs. What are the needs today? What are the challenges? And then what does the future look like? Is this department going to grow? Is there a consolidation opportunities? So we kind of look across all of the different groups, and we kind of document what those room space requirements are. And then where we are today is really diving into the solution. How do we solve for the existing conditions challenges? How do we solve for those future space needs? And how do we kind of layer that into an overall master plan? And then ultimately we create that kind of interactive capital improvements plan that will look 10 years, 20 years into the future. So where we've been. So we are going to do a brief look, a high-level look at the existing conditions assessment. There is a very extensive document, hundreds of pages, that we've reviewed with town leadership. So we will not go that in depth tonight, but that document is available in draft form, and we do have initial finding videos on the website. So we have created kind of a project website It talks about timeline, it talks about upcoming events, but it also has initial finding videos. So those videos kind of give a brief overview of the building vintages. We're narrating those videos. They're about 3 to 5 minutes long, so they're kind of bite-sized review of each building, kind of what we see for the architectural exterior, the interior, the building systems, and we kind of talk through those major components. So again, kind of trying to walk you through what our kind of initial findings are. And tonight we'll kind of recap what the common themes we saw, kind of building to building. But again, it is worth, if you have the time, kind of listening to those videos. So we'll recap again 5 major common themes that we saw. And again, these vary across each building kind of to different extents. And there's been improvements even since we toured them initially. So the first one is overall, some a little bit more than others are generally well maintained but aging. So one example of this is if the police department is pretty well maintained. If you walk into that lobby, it has different operational challenges and storage challenges, but overall it's in pretty good condition. There might be components where we saw maybe some concerns on the roof or some deterioration on the exterior, but that's a good example of a building that's generally well maintained. Another example is we saw the facilities garage, and it was soon after the facilities department had moved in. So that has improved since we've been there. But we did note some kind of deterioration of that building exterior and concerns with water damage, and kind of we noted those. There's some temporary facilities on site, so we wanted to make sure we captured kind of each of those components, not only looking at an individual building, but kind of everything that was happening on site. So as a part of those videos, we also talk about, are there any site challenges? I know Town Hall is one in particular where we heard a lot about site challenges, either whether it was parking, whether it was kind of those crisscross of uses and the challenges for accessibility. So we document those as well as a part of the existing conditions assessment.
And I don't want you to, to panic. I've had the opportunity to do a lot of municipal facilities assessments in my career. And, I want you to walk away with this actually feeling a little bit of pride. Your facilities are well maintained. Your crew is doing a great job. But just like, it's like my house. It's 80 years old now, and I'm always reminded of, we need to do this little bit of work here. We found some of those things. Some of them are already underway and getting fixed, and some are on the planning docket. But I think overall, I'm very impressed with the maintenance efforts that are going on, and the quality of quite frankly, some of the buildings, some that I didn't expect to be as great as they are. So I do want to offer some kudos to facilities staff and to the town in general for the efforts they're doing, but there's always opportunities for more, and a few of those show up in the videos.
I'd like to add, there's a public comment that just came through asking a question on, was there a comprehensive facilities overview from 2014 used as the basis for this? That was a big study that the town funded, and I'm wondering what happened to that, since Chris had said there wasn't a capital or maintenance plan in place 2 years ago.
Yes, so there was a study done in 2014, 2015. We have transferred that over to Tecton, and they are using that. I think that study was not necessarily always used or always looked at. We certainly didn't have all of the funding. Jeff, I don't know if you wanted to add anything related to that.
Yeah, I think the DRA report that was done back in 2014 and 2015 has been the basis for a lot of capital improvements that have happened over the years. I think the one thing that we're hoping to come away from this process with is an actual working, functioning CIP plan that can be an evolving, constantly changing, well, not constantly changing, but an evolving document over the years as we continue to move forward. So the DRA report has been an invaluable tool that Tecton used as part of their assessments for the buildings, but now we're looking to build on that. And once again, a lot can change in 9 or 10 years. So it's been a decade since that report, and our buildings have changed quite a bit since then. So. And
I think we've touched on it a few times. It is very common for master plans or needs assessments, facility assessments like this. They end up being a few hundred pages long, and they are lengthy, and they're in depth, but they are a moment in time. So what we're trying to kind of incorporate here is that how can we hand over the working documents so that as items occur, it can be updated and it can be leveraged as a continuous tool. So we've made this modification, we're gonna check that off the list and maybe we can add more. So it again becomes that kind of continuous tool as kind of the years pass. So it doesn't end up, on a shelf somewhere 10 years down the road or 15 years down the road. So another major common theme was building systems. So that's a major component that we look at. And a few systems in particular, whether it just be components of that system or kind of the major pieces, are kind of nearing the end of useful life. So we've called out specifically, I think in the videos, we take a little bit more of a high level approach. There's a lot of content there to digest. But we looked at mechanical, plumbing, we looked at whether they're all sprinkler, fire protected. We looked at the electrical systems. So we looked at every kind of little piece, and then we give an opinion on where it is in kind of its useful life.
And I think this is a common misunderstanding. And again, I've done a lot of these. Beyond its useful life doesn't mean it's broken.
Correct.
Beyond its useful life is an engineering term. I'm not sure who started that. But what it really tells us is that, a lot of different systems have different life cycles. Some of them are longer than others. Fire alarms is one of my favorites because it has one of the shorter life cycles. And the problem that comes into play with fire alarm systems in particular, but I think this is applicable across the board, is that the evolution of fire alarm systems is pretty quick. And so you'll have a fire alarm system that's maybe 10, 15 years old, and our engineers may report that it's beyond its useful life. And that doesn't mean, again, that it isn't working. What it means is that the availability of parts and upgrades gets harder and harder. So it's not, oh my goodness, I should tear this out and replace it tomorrow.
Yes.
You should be aware that the difficulty to maintain this is going to increase. So if you're doing expansion, if you're doing renovation, if you're doing changes, then that might be a time to think about, okay, how do we update that system and make sure that it has extended life? The good news is some of those systems last a lot longer. Boilers can be 40 years, and other systems can be, anywhere in between. But, it's understanding the terminology that it's not broken, but we do need to be aware of it and think about, okay, what do we do in the future as the building evolves, the building changes, and make sure that, that 10 years from now, it isn't still beyond its useful life.
And in our programming conversation, so I'll talk about our programming process, but we did a in-depth interview. We sat down with every single department head and a few of their staff members, and we got a little bit more of that subjective kind of feedback on how the systems are functioning outside of just what we can see from if we're reading the age on the boiler, for example. So we did include some of that as well. Are there humidity challenges that kind of, if you're looking at kind of the face value you may not see, but as an occupant of the building, they are very aware of what kind of those pros and cons are of their current systems. So those are also reflected in the report. Building components and the roof and envelope. So again, this varied kind of across all of the different buildings. Some were in really great shape and some have deteriorated. And a lot of that may have to do with the actual construction of its building, of the building itself. We did look at a few older vintages, and those, in that type of construction, you may see a little bit more deterioration. And again, some of that we could trace back to maybe water, and the roof needs to be replaced, and we've seen some of that kind of materialize in the exterior envelope. And in others, it was just kind of minor maintenance items that we noted. But we did again look. We looked on the exterior envelope, we looked at the site, and then we also looked at that roof construction. So how can we talk about this frequently. Some of the lowest hanging fruit and the best investment you can make is in that building envelope. If you have a tight envelope, it leads to a lot of efficiencies down the road. So we want to make sure that that is buttoned up And that can, sometimes those items come at a higher cost, but sometimes they are lower cost items, and there's ways that we can kind of make sure that it creates a really good foundation for any improvements in the future, especially if you're looking to upgrade systems. We want to make sure that envelope's efficient so that you're not then seeing an increase in utility costs, for example. So we kind of take a big picture look when we're looking at that envelope.
And like Jeff had said about the building systems, the mechanical systems, things like that, you'll notice in the report and in some of the videos that it's noted several times that the building envelope, the insulation for the building doesn't meet the current code. That doesn't mean it has to today, but when we're looking at a renovation or an upgrade to a building, there are times in which the building code is going to require you to upgrade that envelope system to meet the current code. So we just want to make sure that the town is aware of that when they go through and think about doing a renovation or an addition to a building in the future.
And the same would apply to accessibility.
Exactly.
So, the envelope, any code requirement is, it's enacted when we start to do work to a certain extent. So lack of storage was a theme we heard from almost every department, and most of that had to do with file storage. And we've talked at length with kind of our working group and with the department heads on, are there ways where we can compile all of the different requirements, whether they be local, regional, state, on what needs to remain in paper form, what can be digitized, how can we create efficiencies so that it's not taking as much space. Because it's taking away from a lot of the usable space available, especially in the work areas. So we've captured a lot of those storage needs. In some cases, I think the departments and the staff are doing the best they can by moving the kind of pieces around to create, if there's an opportunity to store something, they're taking that opportunity. So that is definitely a theme we saw kind of across the building. But I think it's we're seeing that as an opportunity. There's an opportunity to save or provide additional space that's currently being utilized to kind of store paper. So how can we create an efficiency there by instilling potentially that, and we've talked about including that in a part of the capital improvements plan. So that kind of that CIP being more comprehensive, and it's not just let's build a new building. They're not all major projects. We're going to really get down to even kind of procedures or systems that can be in place that can create opportunities in the future. And finally, some outdated finishes. So again, this is a common one we see kind of given the vintages of the building. So we've noted kind of where they have started to kind of age or deteriorate, noting any safety concerns or accessibility concerns, and again, including that report that was previously done and the concerns stated in that report. But kind of overall, there are some outdated finishes, so looking to upgrade those. But really the focus has been, how can we create more efficiencies? How can we better utilize the space available and the assets available, and just create, better work areas for the staff and for the community as well. Anything you guys want to add for existing? Okay. Any questions on the existing conditions? I'm going to jump. We'll have opportunities to talk about it again, but I just want to, any questions overall on the assets? Yes?
I wanted to ask about the roofs, because I did notice in some of the material that was online, it said several buildings, need new roofs. Sounds expensive. How expensive is that?
It depends on what the roof is and what you're
So
replacing it with.
for members of the public, we might just need to repeat the question so they can hear us on
certainly.
WCAT, just so.
All right, so the question, in case those watching didn't hear it, is a number of the videos talked about the need for roof improvements or new roofs. And I think the comment was, it sounds expensive. How expensive is that? And so my reply is, that varies depending on the material. You do have some slate roofs. Slate roofs, if you're replacing it's fairly expensive. Asphalt shingle roofs, single ply membrane rubber roofs are less expensive. What are we seeing? $20, $25 a square foot for rubber roofs these days, and shingles are a little bit more. Yeah, it is. There is always a capital expense that goes along with roofs. Anybody that owns a house knows about that. We're seeing longer lifespan in roofing materials than we used to. And I've been doing this 38 years, and we used to be excited about, specifying 25-year shingles. Now we can do 40-year shingles. And then some products last even longer than that. So yeah, there is some cost associated with that. I think a deeper dive when we identify a roof that is is evidencing signs of age or signs of leaking is to dig a little bit deeper and understand, does it need a total roof replacement? Or is it a partial, or is it just flashing? You know, slate shingle roofs, slate roofs are a good example. They last a long time. And you might see deterioration, you might see some softening deck, you might see water stains. That's a localized issue as opposed to a total roof replacement. So, you know, I think at this level we've said, yeah, we see issues. Dig deeper and understand what they are.
And a lot of that will be contingent on the solution presented. So we don't kind of want to like wholesale say like, we have to replace all of these roofs, because if we're doing a lighter touch renovation to that building, then the code again allows flexibility in how we manage kind of the roof. And we want to be able to present all of that data so that the town can make an educated decision. These are the benefits, these are, you know, the potential negatives, this is how much time that roof would last, you know, this solution, that solution. So we kind of want to present those options, kind of depending on the solution.
Having said all that, the cost of a roof replacement is way less than a cost of space replacement, or it can even be less than the cost of the damage that results from leaking roofs. So I think, you know, in general, it's a smart investment to make. If it requires a full roof replacement, you're getting a lot of valuable space because you've done that.
Chris, I would add also, I think one of the reasons we want to look at this so comprehensively and kind of take a full portfolio-wide approach is every time we look at a project like a roof, for example, it opens up the need to have conversations on other things like solar. Is a perfect example of that. So you would ask a question, how expensive is a roof? Well, do we want to contemplate solar? Does that necessitate the need to look at structural systems underneath? So that's one of the reasons we want to have this full comprehensive picture, is so when we're looking at a building, we're thinking about everything on that building that we need now and that we might be contemplating down the road. That is one of the big reasons we're having such trouble looking at solar installations around our buildings, is because we don't have the roofs that are ready for solar yet. We have one in town now, thanks to Jeff on the Blanchard project, but everything opens up about 5 more conversations down the road about what we see kind of town-wide for that building use and what are the other priorities around that building. So it's hard to answer the exact question of what a roof costs until you can answer all those questions too. So.
Yes.
Following on the affordability and the roofs, I'm just curious, from the 2014 study, it did outline a bunch of tasks and it ranked them. Can you just give us a baseline of how much of that was actually done versus how much of that is just carrying over into this new?
So
Jeff, do you have that information?
So the question is about the 2014 study. It identified a lot of items and prioritized them. And the question is, how many of them have been completed versus how many are carrying over? And Jeff, I'm going to look at you on this one.
Given the fact that I've only been here in town for a short time, I certainly can't enumerate all the projects that have been completed from that. But like I said earlier, the DRA report has been a great proponent of getting a lot of capital done leading up to where we are today. It would take a while to talk about what has been completed and what hasn't been completed, but there have been a considerable amount of projects from that report that have been done. But that being said, in the limitations we have for our capital each year, there's still a lot in that report that has not been completed.
And that's kind of what I'm worried about, like going forward, you still have the old stuff and then add on new.
Let me add, I want to add to that because I think this is important when we talk about this in the context of the need to develop a long-term CIP. That 2014 report should have been and could have been the foundation for a long-term CIP, but it only works if it's redone every single year. I mean, it doesn't do me any good to have a 10-year plan and then be on year 9. I need to be on year 1 of every single plan that we have every single year. If you come back and ask us that question in 5 years and we can't tell you exactly what was done, then we failed in our CIP process. So that's really what we're trying to do here, is build a plan that we can follow, that we can update ourselves every year, that works within the resource limitations we have. So I think that's an important point to kind of keep in mind when we look at past studies and past things that have been done and where we want to take it. We need to do a better job of that.
And that's why we've committed to sharing the Excel files that create the basis of our CIPs with the town, so that, you know, you can use it, you can check it off, and then you can add to it, so that it stays fresh. And, you know, will there be a day when somebody else has to come along and do something new? Probably. But hopefully we can provide a document that carries us for a ways into the future.
Nothing online.
Okay. And I think that's something worth noting. If we're creating an Excel document for the CIP, I've heard kind of the, you know, what was incorporated into that 2014 study. We have that. Maybe there's a way we can indicate, you know, any line items that are kind of captured in both, so that it's kind of highlighting that overlap. So you, again, how do we create a comprehensive tool that kind of summarizes all work to date? I mean, we can't fully incorporate that because it's not our work, but at least we can highlight any overlaps, so that you can at least see, okay, these are the items that have been in place for a while. Maybe those move to the top of a prioritization, because we will be doing the same type of prioritization kind of over those different year increments. So maybe I think we can probably overlap that content.
And there's going to be, I think it's also important to kind of keep the expectations reasonable. I mean, we have resource limitations. We're going to have a huge list of things that need to be done. We're not going to be able to afford to do all of them. We're going to have a plan ultimately that fits within the resources we have available. If that means that we push things off, we're going to have to make those decisions as we go. And it's on us to really explain the consequences and make sure people understand this is what we can and can't do right now. This is the result of us not being able to do it, and then plan for that in the future. I've worked with CIPs for years, and if they're not realistic and they don't fit within the bounds of your resources and your staff limitations, they'll never get accomplished. So it's going to be very bounded by the resources that we believe we have available. So there will be changes along the way, and we'll be adapting it, and things will be getting carried over year after year that we may not be able to accomplish with the resources we have. So just to set expectations, we're not going to come up with a list and expect we're just going to tick that list off and then start fresh. So.
And I think it's also important to keep in mind that, you know, the best laid plans,
Yeah.
things happen, right? If you look at the past 10 years since the DRA report, this thing called COVID happened. All this stuff derailed a lot of what could have been great opportunities to pursue capital. And, you know, we can plan and forecast as much as we can, but there's always some anomaly that comes, you know, undetected that has to be addressed quickly. And so.
There's a question in the Zoom chat.
Yeah.
Would like me to read that?
Yeah.
Rather long one, so bear with me. So from what we've heard from Kristen, there has been no maintenance program for taxpayer-funded assets for many years. Can you please speak to the plan, if any, for ongoing maintenance from here on out? Will town employees be tasked to perform maintenance? Will Tecton become our town maintenance service supplier? The narrative about the conditions of our failing assets in tonight's discussion is different from the narrative that we heard on the videos we were asked to watch prior to this meeting. That being said, is our focus going to shift from replacing assets to repairing assets? Lastly, given the financial constraints our town faces, how is ongoing maintenance going to be funded moving forward?
Yeah, so I can take that, and Jeff Goodwin, I may ask for your assistance. So I wouldn't say that there has been no funding from taxpayers for maintenance. Certainly Jeff's team works in and out every day maintaining our facilities and our assets. That comes out of his facilities budget that's approved at town meeting. What we're doing here tonight and throughout the next few months is creating that plan that we will be using moving forward for all of our buildings to maintain our assets. So we have not had that comprehensive plan that we've been updating. The town and our contractors would be doing the maintenance or doing the renovations or whatever it may be. Tecton is the architects. They are not maintenance people. They are not engineers. They are not construction general contractors. So really what I want to say is that you as the townspeople are helping us develop this plan moving forward of how we are going to maintain our buildings and if we do renovate or build new at this point in time. And finally, I think the focus on shifting from replacing assets to repairing assets, that's again speaking to the roof conversation that we had before. Every situation is different. Does a repair make sense? Can we get more useful life out of that if we repair it? Or should we be replacing? So again, we can't say we will be replacing everything or we will be repairing everything. That will be the outcome of the plan. So hopefully that helped answer that question. And if we need to clarify that over a phone conversation at a future point in time, please feel free to reach out to the town manager's office. We're happy to do that.
All right. So I'm gonna keep going. All right, so programming and space needs. So this was kind of that second piece. So after we looked at all of the buildings, almost simultaneously, we had the pleasure of sitting down with kind of every department, and we've added to that as we've kind of gone through the process. And we met with either a department head or multiple staff members, and we talked about kind of what are the challenges with their space today. How do they see their department changing over the next 10, 15, 20, 25 years into the future? No one has a crystal ball, but I think we like to talk about, you know, do you see additional services? Do you see opportunities for greater efficiency? Do you see overlap with other departments? Is there a way to, you know, or are you kind of, do you both have the same space needs and can you share? So we had in-depth conversations with each of them. We developed, again, a lengthy document that captures kind of a summary of spaces. So it kind of labels, you know, I need this office space at this square footage, and how we determine that. It's not like we just say, okay, every office is 120 square feet. We really get into the details. We want to understand, you know, how much, you know, file storage do you need? What type of desk do you need? Do you have visitors frequently? Do they sit in your office, or do you go up to a service window? And all of those different pieces of the room's description builds out each space requirement, and then those numbers are totaled. So again, it's not, you know, just kind of a database that we have. We kind of generate it based on the conversations and the specific needs of that position or that department. And then those total to kind of an overall department need. In that, again, includes today's needs and future needs. And then those are totaled into overall building kind of opinions of total square footage. Now, with that being said, that is kind of it is intended to be devoid of the current building. So we want it to be a true statement of what the space need is. It's not, it doesn't take into consideration that they are in a current space or they are kind of using this space for 3 different functions. This is a statement of their needs, and then we take that and we kind of apply it to the assets that exist today. And we look for efficiencies. We met multiple times as a group and said, okay, there's overlap here. You know, they can share, you know, they both have a need for a break area or a small meeting room. That was one that we talked about at length, you know, a various size of meeting room. You've kind of got the large meeting room, you've got a kind of medium to small, and then there's kind of a gap in some of those smaller meetings that are necessary, and they're using rooms that are maybe too large for what they really need. So, but not every department needs a meeting room. They can share that asset, they can share that space. So we looked at kind of where are the efficiencies, where are the overlaps. And that creates kind of this statement of need. We did talk about kind of what our goals, and we're gonna circle back to that activity tonight of what are the values, what are the objectives of this master plan and feasibility assessment, you know, overall, and that allows us to kind of create a framework to make informed decisions. If we have a better understanding of what's most important, that will help you prioritize the ultimate kind of recommendations. And that really results in the best return on your investment. The last thing we want is you to kind of, we started talking about it being comprehensive. We don't want you to, you know, invest money in something that you're gonna have to redo because you don't kind of have that big picture solution kind of known day one. So you're gonna kind of overlap and do rework, kind of ultimately working towards that future need.
Question.
Including the schools with all of that too, and I'll just give you the example. A couple years ago, we had a 100-person meeting room we were trying to build by town hall. There's a 100-person meeting room that was going to be built in the library, and at the same time, we'd given money for a feasibility study for central office for the schools. and you would assume that they would want a decent size meeting room as well. So I'm wondering if everything you just said included that group.
So the question for those at home is, does that assessment include the schools? There's been multiple requests. I'm going to try to do a synopsis here of large meeting rooms from various departments, particularly with the school and the school offices, and the possibility of doing something next to town hall. How is that integrated? I'll start. I mean, there was a report previously done for the schools, which we are referencing and using as guidance so that we have their information. We did not re-interview, do a space needs review with the school, but we have the previous document from SMMA that we are using as part of this exercise. So we're looking across what their space needs say, what other space needs say, and we're looking for opportunities for sharing resources. Does that address the question?
Yeah, as long as
Okay.
they're full in.
There's a comment online that they are hearing the audience questions.
So I think there's a distinction. So some people are logged on via Zoom, which they would be able to hear because we have the owl, but there's also people watching on WestfordCAT. So they can only
Okay.
hear through these microphones. So Christy, thank you so much for that clarification that you can hear from the audience. We're just making sure that WestfordCAT watchers can hear as well. We appreciate that.
So you have to endure my repeating of the questions. I'm sorry.
It also helps clarify that you're understanding the question.
Yeah.
And I do want to add, at the previous question, there was a comment that was added to that said, great point about resource limitations, but it seems we're trying to build new fire station library, 51 Main Street, instead of focusing on maintenance and envelope preservation. To that previous question that we already asked, so I just wanted to make sure that we had that read and weren't ignoring you intentionally.
Yeah, and we are entering into the master planning section of this study, and as we look at the needs, the future needs, we look at the building assessments, there are lots of options on the table. So I at the end of the day, we plan to not ignore any community asset. Does every community asset need to stay as a community? I don't know the answer to that yet. But we would like to leave guidance for future growth and future plans for the community, so that we're addressing all assets, and whether it's 51 Main or any other building, that it doesn't get forgotten in this process.
And I'm going to get ahead of myself a little bit because it's on the last slide of the presentation, but our next community conversation is intended to review with the community those kind of what-if scenarios and how we are recommending the utilization of assets. So you're going to have the opportunity to provide direct feedback on, what if we combined these two things? What if we do this solution? What if we renovate this? But you're going to be able to see those solutions and provide feedback before it's finalized into a master plan. So that really we'll do a much deeper dive in our next conversation on kind of the ultimate recommendation or the potential recommendations kind of as a result of our work through this master plan phase. All right, so we're leading into the first activity. And so the first thing that we wanted to recap is that we did a lot of think tanks and workshops with all of the department heads. So the first one was a workshop where we did 2 activities. The first one was focused on we called sticky ideas, and essentially it was if this master plan could achieve one thing, what would it be? And we were looking big picture, kind of try to stay outside, step back from kind of we need more storage, and think, we want to ensure that we are improving the customer or community experience. How can we increase our ability to deliver service more efficiently? Is there ways for us to collaborate more department to department? So kind of big picture ideas. And a few of them that they came up with, again, was focused very much so on what's the community's experience and how we deliver service. And that's kind of, I'm leading again into our second activity of the night. Quality and equity of space. We talked a lot about kind of providing that equity across departments. We talked about storage. It did come up, kind of resolution and digitization, inclusivity, et cetera. So here are some of those big ideas that kind of came out of that exercise.
If you look on the left, prioritization of needs, I think it answers some of the discussions we've been having tonight. How do you make sure that you're spending, capital improvement money on the right priorities, so that, those things that are going to cause devalue in facilities get addressed soon. And those things that are just annoyances maybe are a little lower. We have this problem at my house, 8 years old, and my well has too much silt in it. And so there were all these other bigger priorities that we've addressed over the years. And now we've changed so many or cleaned so many filters. That's the priority. And, I think the same thing happens with your buildings is, you focus on a lot of priorities, and now we need to make sure that we're addressing the ones that are, that create the inconvenience, that create the inefficiency, that create the hardship, or more importantly, create risk to the value of that asset in the future. So that's a big part of prioritization.
So the second piece of that activity was we kind of built on that and we said, okay, now let's prioritize. All those are great ideas, and honestly, this was those dozen items or so that popped up. That was a consolidated list. There's 3 boards worth of ideas, and we started, trying to create themes, and we talked a lot about scalability, flexibility. We really dove into some of those topics. There was a lot of passion around of many of them. So this exercise is actually the same exercise that we're going to ask you guys to do tonight. So we are going to give you the opportunity to prioritize those goals, those ideas that the department heads threw out there, so that we can understand where your priorities lie, and then we can look at how they compare and try to, again, look for alignment. So this leads into our first activity. So for those online, you can either scan the QR code, or you can kind of go to the website and enter this code. It'll kind of pop up with a field. I'm going to leave this up for the time being, but I'm going to quickly switch over to the online platform, which is where I'll run the survey so we can all see the results live. And that also has the QR code. So I'll wait for folks in the room. And if you don't have the ability to add, and we're going to provide kind of links so that these things we can kind of continue to gather this feedback. So we can, we'll add those to the website so that you guys can add that content after the fact.
And there are a couple of questions that are floating in online. We're going to hold those off until we get through this portion of it, and then we'll circle back to any open questions that are in the chat. But we thank you for those online that are participating.
Does anyone in the room need help with the QR code if they want to participate?
I might, but I'm going to share.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to flip over so it'll pop right back up as soon as I do that. Sorry, I'm sorry. Okay, it's back. It's back.
Comments online.
Yes.
If you open up your
If you want to
camera-
come up, Landon,
Yeah, if you
look
just,
at it,
oh yeah,
feel free.
please.
I could just read it to you.
Sure. Yeah, 7442-3868. You were right. That was perfect. And the code will remain at the top of the screen throughout.
We did this in a community that had really bad Wi-Fi one time.
We were manually entering
That was rough.
answers.
We started passing papers around. Hopefully you can all get in, especially you folks at home.
I hope the Wi-Fi ended up on that master plan.
Yeah, it did. Okay.
All right, Matt walked away from his computer, so I hope it does. No messages are popping up
Nope, we're
saying.
good, so-
Okay.
Okay, we're good.
I got it.
All right.
All right, so I think, is everybody good here?
We have a green arrow.
Okay,
Yep,
we got
the
an
minute
arrow.
I move, it'll
Let's
go.
do it.
Okay. So you can rank these goals. As you click them, they will populate, and then you can drag them up and down. So if you can't kind of choose your item immediately, as you click them, you can kind of move them around. And again, if this is something you're more comfortable doing on your computer, this will be available as a part of the project website, so you can do it after the fact. And we will make sure that we incorporate, the results of this will be incorporated into the master plan report.
Is it expected that we put all of those options in order, or can you just put some in?
I believe you can just put some, and then it'll just kind of equally value the ones you don't answer, kind of towards the bottom of the list. So if you just want to add a few that are kind of your top priorities, and then hit submit, I do not believe you have to select all of them.
Next question is, if there are some that, in my opinion, should not be a priority at all.
Ah, okay.
If they're of equal, essentially what that, yeah.
Let's save those and talk about them
Yeah,
afterwards.
'cause it seems like
Yeah.
biased the way this is set up.
Okay.
Matt.
Well, make sure they stay at the bottom of your list.
Yeah, if you don't put an answer, I think they'll just equally give them kind of like zeros at the bottom. So they wouldn't put them in any particular order. They would essentially fall to the bottom of the list.
So I'm not going to try to do this like a horse race because I don't talk that
Sure.
fast.
No,
But I'm
that's a
seeing
great.
utilization efficiency just slid down to third
So
place.
this is,
That's interesting.
So we did have one question, and I think this is worth clarifying. So clear wayfinding is a little bit of an industry term. So clear wayfinding essentially means, in simplest for clear signage. So you can find your way to a department. You know exactly where to go. You know where your points of service are. Everything is laid out efficiently.
Rebecca, do you have that code again? Someone in the chat is asking for it.
Oh.
That 8-digit code.
Yeah, it should be at the top.
I don't see it at the top of what I.
Will it copy into the chat if I copy it in?
Yes. Can you do that? Should be in the PowerPoint.
Let me give
I just
it-
want to exit this screen.
A lot of shuffling in the priority
If
list
you
here.
do
This
the
is
website
exciting.
with
Oh,
code.
yeah.
Yeah, 748 362. My memory's not that good anymore. So we're gonna copy the code into the chat so everyone has it available. And this is the only question of this exercise, so we can stay on this for a little bit.
This is like being at the carnival with the little horse races.
We're
And
like-
you're watching one
everything
slides
was-
forward, one slides back a little bit.
We did one where there was like voting, where it was like scales, and it was just like, it was like, oh, number one, nope, last place, nope, number one. It literally felt like they were racing along the.
My favorite one just got bumped from 3rd down to 7th all of a sudden. Now it's back up to 4th. Yeah, so yeah, it's like, yeah.
How are we doing in here?
Well, they filter itself.
How about over here? We're getting there? Getting working?
We're collaborating to share the storefront, so.
Collaboration, your number one?
Matt, do you want me to type the answer?
Yeah, I'm not able to.
Can you read it to me?
Yes.
So, Mentimeter, M-E,
MENTI.com.
T.com.
yep.
And the code is 68.
Oh, shoot. Hold on.
Nope, that's good.
That's not the code.
6-8.
Huh?
There's two codes, one's
6, 8.
7 something.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Matt.
Where? Oh, this is the second. Okay.
Yeah, that one.
7442
So no 6-8 at the beginning. 7442.
Yep.
3868.
Thank you.
And I see a bunch of other participants jumped on, so we'll give it a minute.
How many total are on there?
10.
On the Zoom, if there's more on the.
No, there's 10 participants in the Mentimeter
Oh, in Mentimeter.
survey right now. Yep.
There's 14 on Zoom right now.
And we had a few collaborations here,
Right.
so.
Yep.
And again, we can kind of provide this as a self.
Sure.
So that, it'll populate the same results. So we'll be able
So you're
to,
gonna put this on
it
the
will
website?
re-average every time someone adds a response. So we'll leave it open.
I think
So-
that'd be great.
Yeah, so if other people want to add, it'll just kind of, it'll continue to reorganize the priorities.
Right, you've been granted more time by the folks over here on the right.
We just had 2 people jump online, so they are just starting, so you have time. I just saw them pop in.
It's not like the SAT where there's a limited time.
Yeah, there's no wrong answers.
But we may get sleepy later.
Oh, jeez, really?
For 2 days.
Still 10 in there?
14.
It's still jumping around.
Yeah, there's like 2 or 3 people that just jumped on, so I think they're doing it right now. They were probably using the one we sent on the chat. I don't know why it's not on the top of the screen. It usually is.
That's gonna take it. Rebecca said we were going to.
Yeah, it'll be the same link, so it'll continue to reprioritize as we get those additional results.
Turn that off. What, if you leave this for a few days or something like that? Edit the website?
Kristen, will this be available online for us to see this presentation? and the
Yes, so
results?
we're gonna post the presentation, the report, and this Mentimeter online tomorrow, and we'll push out more,
I can't read that.
yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to add it to a slide, so we're going to be.
Okay.
We learned this lesson in the department head because we were trying to screenshot it in. We were like, okay, if we squint, we can kind of trying to zoom in.
There's a question of how many people are participating in this survey. So right now we have 14 attendees online and 7 people in the room. So I see that there's 15 people participating in the survey right now. To be clear with people online, because they may hear our chitter chatter here, we are going to put the report and this Mentimeter online for a few days, starting tomorrow, for your participation or for you to share with friends and family.
Quick question, and hopefully there will be more coming days to hear this, but are there any specific plans to ensure that we get a good cross-section representation of the community? That's been a difficult thing to do in the past for the town.
Yep.
So are we going to try anything different to make sure that we hear from all members of the community, not just the people that are always here?
Yeah, so we have just engaged a new communications consultant, and they helped us put out some new press the end of last week, beginning of this week. We hope that's getting out to new people. We've also put items in the school newsletter, and we're trying other angles. We will have three more opportunities for participation for this, so we're trying to continue to evolve that wheel of who's involved and who is not. We can't force anyone to participate, but we're trying to get the word out more and more.
I understand we can't force people to communicate, but I just want to make sure that, or ask the question,
Yes.
if it looks like their responses aren't really representative of the town, will the town take that into consideration when this master plan is put together and the decisions that are made?
Yeah, we're reviewing that every step of the way of what participation we got, what we need more of before we move on to the next step.
And from our perspective, I mean, every answer we get, every guidance we get from these solutions becomes a part of our decision-making process. That's why we don't make our decisions before we have these conversations. I think we did a project recently for another community in Massachusetts where we did a whole series of presentations, and the greatest compliment that we got out of the entire process was when an individual came up to me at the end of the community conversation series, and he said that the most amazing thing is that you would hear comments in one meeting, and the next meeting you actually responded to them. And that's the whole point of this, is we want to hear this, we want it to be guidance. I feel your pain, you know, it's like not enough people, we'd love more.
It doesn't.
But we're having so much fun here, we encourage everybody else to come to the next one.
It is a consistent challenge, though, trying to make sure that we get a good cross-section of participation. So,
Are we good?
Yeah, we're done.
We're good? Everybody here's good?
did you have another thought?
I was gonna say, I was gonna piggyback on what you said. Do you have other than blanket communications, I call them blanket, but often frequent, try different audiences, do you have suggestions? Because how do you earmark specific community, member profiles, if that's what you're saying?
Exactly, that's exactly what I'm saying is.
So how do we do that? So I'll throw it back on you.
Well, fair enough. I don't necessarily have the answers, but I do know that we're a fairly diverse community. We have a fairly large Asian population, Indian, Chinese, all of that. That I don't see anyone representing that here. I don't know if anyone's online, but I do know in other issues in the town recently that it's also been a problem that I've noticed that then becomes evident when something goes to a vote or town meeting. Then you get a wider representation, and at that point there's been a lot of effort put into it that are there ways we can reach out again to the Chinese community, the Indian community, to try to get some input from these other parts of the community.
Thank you.
And again, I don't have the answer, but
Sure. We'll revisit that with our team of how we can do that. I'm getting comments that people cannot hear if you're sitting back there. So if you do want to come up to the mic when you have comments, if you're able-bodied, we'd really appreciate that. So I think we can probably move on.
Should I recap those statements, or?
If you want to quickly, yes, that's
Yeah,
fine.
I'm going to try. Please forgive me if I don't do a fabulous job, but the commentary that we've been discussing was about, getting enough representation across different points of view throughout the community. Obviously, there's a limited number of people participating online. There's a limited number of people participating live here. And, it is a challenge that we face a lot. How do you get more people engaged and involved? Are there other ways we can outreach? And certainly with the communications consultant that the town has brought on board, we'll be looking at that. And I think by trying to make a lot of these tools available online, not only in the event, but so that you can come back and do it later, is a step in that direction. I often tell the story, I've been doing architecture now for 38 years. And there was a time where we met with the client, we designed a building, and then we sold it to the community. And I look back at those days now as selling it was a bit of a harsh thing. It was kind of, this is what you need, you must do this. We try to take a different view of that now, and I think it's really important because it's not my building. It's the community's building. And we really want the community to be represented in this process. So I think it's a point well made that, getting more involvement and more participation is an absolutely top priority. And, if we can find more ways to do that, absolutely, we're going to engage in that. So how did I do? Is that close? Anywhere? Yeah, I got it close enough. Okay.
And to that note, I think we'd be open to recommendations. We do love to show up where the community already is. Everyone's schedules are busy, and if there's events in town where we can at least be available for questions or to provide information or an update on kind of where the master plan is, we're happy to attend those on weekends or whatever days or nights of the week they might occur. So I'm going to exit out of this so I can incorporate it into the PowerPoint.
Is this where I'm supposed to fill in with a story?
Yeah, so.
Oh, I just told good
Yes.
stories.
But I will say, so I'm going to open this up and I'm going to get out of this screen. But the conversation we'd like to have is, did you feel that, something that's important to you, a priority or goal of yours was not on this list? Or you just feel like this shouldn't be a priority? It's not important. There's too many here. We should really be focusing on something else.
So I did get a question earlier about if you don't think it's a priority. This is a good time to put that in there.
So it's on your is it on the Mentimeter?
It's still on the Mentimeter. I'm just not sharing my screen.
So if you go back to your web link that you were on.
If you wanted to add it, if you want to actually type something out and add it, if you just want to verbally tell us a little bit more of an opportunity to just chime in, we can also add it. We just want to make sure that we're, again, being comprehensive. If you had an idea and it didn't end up on that list, we'd love to know.
Anything coming in online, Matt?
Not related to that.
Not yet?
No.
Anybody thoughts from looking at the list that you just went through? Things you don't think are a priority, things you think should be a priority that weren't there? All right, I didn't write this list. I want the
I can't to see what the list was.
Does anybody have?
I do not have it. I mean, I have it, but utilization, efficiency, customer experience and service, inclusive and inviting public experience, collaboration, flexibility, scalability and future growth, prioritization of needs, variety of meeting spaces that are shared, quality and equity of space, proper staff amenities, consolidation of service, storage resolution / digitization, and clear wayfinding.
No?
That is.
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
Maybe I was on the wrong.
Did you jump ahead?
I think it's very hard to prioritize without, with just in where we are right now financially. I think it's very hard to say, I mean, all those things would be great.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the
But it's
challenge
really
of
difficult.
prioritizing is
Yeah,
that
it's really tough.
everything's great, but what are the most important things? Yeah, that's tricky. How we doing? Do I have to tell a story now? Yeah?
In a minute or two, yes.
Why don't we, there's a couple of
Is there
questions.
questions?
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, let's do that.
So one that was back a few minutes ago, as we were moving into the Mentimeter. Maybe you plan to discuss this topic at a future meeting. If so, feel free to disregard. Wasn't sure of your explanation about future ongoing maintenance. It was mentioned that some town employees have been providing necessary maintenance. Can I please ask why the condition of the old fire station has been allowed to degenerate to the point where the interior is so trashed? Moving forward, will you be analyzing whether or not we need a third-party contractor to provide overall ongoing maintenance? Or are you leaning toward providing selective maintenance by town employees coupled with third-party contractors?
Should I take that, Jeff?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that question. So, just to clarify on following up on Kristen's previous statement, we do have an in-house maintenance team here in town that consists of 6 maintenance personnel. We have 1 HVAC, 1 plumbing, 1 electrical, 2 buildings and grounds, and we have 1 carpenter who works in town. Now, these 6 employees have to cover a total of 29 town buildings. That's school and town buildings. That's a lot of ground to cover. It's 1.3 million square feet of building space. So they're spread thin, it would be an understatement to say. With that being said, we always attempt and go and assess needs in individual buildings with our town staff. And then we determine whether or not we need to outsource a particular function on any given day, whether we bring in our outside mechanical contractor or bring in an outside company to service septic pumps, for instance. So it's really on a need-by-need basis. Once again, I can't speak to what has been done in years past, but I know that right around the time when I came on board with the town, I was working for Paul Fox, and that was right around or shortly after the facilities department was kind of consolidated between town and schools. Before that time, it was kind of a siloed approach where maintenance activities happened on the town side and maintenance activities happened on the school side, and those were 2 separate functions. Now those are combined, and with the help of the ticketing system and Brightly, we are now quantifying where we're spending our time, how we're spending our time and money, how we're allocating resources for outsourced work. And with that information, we're developing our preventative maintenance plans moving forward. So once again, we have a lot of buildings here in town. We have limited staff, and it's on a need-by-need basis as to whether or not we address and tackle things in-house or we bring in outside contractors for that work.
And I'll add to that just so everybody understands what it means when we bring in outside contractors. So that takes management. We have to be able to manage those contractors, and we have procurement and financial aspects of that. So I think it's worth pointing out that portion of the contracting and the maintenance operation is really, that's Jeff. We have a few people in his office that assist with that, but it's easy to say we can contract out and do a lot of maintenance, but ultimately we have to manage those contracts. We have to go through the procurement processes around that, and that is a significant lift in and of itself. So Keep in mind, when you think about the size of that staff, over that many square feet, we also have an enormous burden to do the management of those outside contracts. So don't underestimate the amount of work.
And one other thing to consider on top of that is, you know, on the school side and the town side, there is maintenance budgets, and there is money that has always been allocated for those functions. But I will say what happened a few years ago post-COVID with the inflation, it has really put a tremendous dent into those budgets, and I would be lying to say that that's not something that we're still trying to right-size our budgets to accommodate that. So there's been a lot of change with even some of our service contracts around pest management, fire safety, sprinkler, work. These are all realms in which we've seen tremendous increases, and certainly the same could be said for HVAC. So it's a constantly evolving thing, working on these budgets and what our need is. And to your point, Heather, prioritization it's a daunting task, especially where we have a fair amount of deferred maintenance in town. We talk about useful lives of equipment. When all of your equipment is, right in that realm, how do you prioritize which one's first in line? So that's a tremendously huge part of my job. And back to Mike's point, I would say 50% of my daily grind is managing what we have for just ongoing work, around town. So it's, prioritizing how we allocate our resources is a huge piece of what we're trying to accomplish with this. And Tecton has given us, they've come in, they've assessed our building conditions, and what we're going to come away with is a functioning CIP plan to prioritize big ticket items, big picture work, and we're going to come away with cost estimates where we can start plugging that into our capital database and start to predict and forecast a little better what that's going to look like. So.
I have a follow-on comment, and I'm not really sure where to put it, but since we're talking cost.
If you
and
wouldn't
stuff,
mind coming up to the mic, I really appreciate it. Thank you.
So in the narrative online, it said the police boiler was failing and it's 3 years old. Like, that sucks up resources that you could use for something that's barely under warranty. So I feel like there's this hole or this risk all the time where we're missing things like that. I mean, we appropriated money at one of the meetings for the installation for the police station, and the answer was it's been like that from the beginning. So somehow in this plan, I'd like to see some way to incorporate how to get this stuff to not happen. We just spent $7 million on Road and Bush, and they were out there fixing a leak down the front. Like, it's a continual, and you can talk to other people on other committees, and we can brainstorm a massive list, and then you're using those resources to fix past mistakes instead of
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
preventive.
extremely frustrating, and I understand.
Totally is.
I understand your frustration. I'm the lucky guy who's been left trying to resolve these issues. I will say that, when we get into, HVAC projects in the future, I'm definitely going to zero in on being a little more specific about what proprietary brands we use. The boiler was installed at the PD about 8 months before I came online, and if I could go back and be a part of that process, I would have been very specific about what brands we would have entertained putting in there. But
so the warranty's gone on that?
the warranty exists, but the warranty only exists for the combustion chamber and a few other components. Peripheral components to the boiler, not. And I've exercised every option I possibly could on that. But unfortunately, we had some issues and we had to resolve them, and so it's the unfortunate nature of the beast that sometimes these warranties are also that you got to read the fine print and figure out where it applies and where it doesn't apply. So.
And that's our goal, is to put this team in place so we don't have those mistakes that occurred in the past. And we're not putting blame on anyone, but we're being ultra cautious and ultra conservative and documenting everything so we have a proper maintenance plan and these things don't happen in the future, if at all possible.
There are a couple more questions in the chat. We'll circle back to those, but we'll jump into the next segment of the.
Yep.
Of the
So
presentation.
Rebecca, I'm gonna dim the lights if we can't
I was
change
gonna
the
read it.
color.
I was gonna read
Okay.
them,
I'll
yeah.
just dim the lights
I was
as
trying to
well.
zoom in, but it looks like they kind of, I don't know why they shrunk to the middle bit.
And I'll put the lights back on in a moment.
So and there's actually some themes here, so I think that's great. So definitely maintenance responsibility, maintenance of existing facilities, so that is repeated. ADA accessibility, maintaining the historic fabric and historical preservation, revitalization or revitalizing Main Street, a town-wide aesthetics, community amenities, and then I see a few here on energy efficiency, so more on that kind of energy efficiency, sustainability side. So I would, community amenities, yeah, so there's some ADA accessibility. I would summarize to say historic preservation, revitalizing that kind of, town center, Main Street area, and creating a consistent aesthetic, a kind of across all of those town facilities. Maintenance responsibility, so maintaining what you have today, and then ensuring that those are accessible, and accommodate the community needs.
Okay.
Great. All right. Yep.
Oh, we got another question in-house.
Just was, because when we were doing the survey, we were seeing different goals than these. So are we moving on to something else?
These were additional ones that were added on top of the list
This
that
was
we asked
added
about.
items
so.
that people felt weren't on that list.
Okay.
And that are priorities of the community. So we'll make sure we capture these as a part, and I think there's some really good ones in here. Yeah, so these are great. And we'll make sure we add these to kind of, again, we want to capture that comprehensive list of what's most important. And maybe we can pick this up. Maybe we take like the top 5 that came out of the list we provided and we add these into, the next community conversation. So if these are a higher priority, we can modify that list kind of at the next time we speak.
All right, are we ready to?
We're ready to jump in,
Or do we
yes.
need to answer some questions?
I think I'd like to show the results and how they compare, if that's okay. So results comparison. So one of the things that really came out, and this was kind of the first stab at what are those values? What do we want to ensure that we accomplish with this master plan? Is overall developing a clear, actionable framework, and I think you've heard that repeated multiple times, is it needs to be actionable, and it needs to be clear, and it needs to be a tool that can be continuously leveraged throughout the process. The priorities at that time kind of came out with utilization efficiency, quality of space, customer experience, so some of the same themes that you saw. And this might result in kind of shifting on how the town functions and works, and thinking differently about the space that you currently have. So again, we went through the same exercise with town staff and all the department heads. This was the list of their priorities. So this is how they prioritized their top 10 out of kind of those 12 to 15 items. And ironically, 2 of the top 3 are exactly the same. So if you look at the town department head top 3, there was prioritization of needs, customer experience and service, and inclusive and inviting public experience. The answers that you guys just provided is, although your number 1 is different and your most important prioritization is that utilization efficiency. So again, kind of I think that's indicating is how do we best utilize what we have available to us today. And then also, but that same customer experience and service and ensuring that we create an inclusive and inviting public experience. So number 2 and 3 matched from kind of the town staff, department head, town administration, town manager's office, those priorities to what the community feels. So that's great to see that there is alignment on those top 3 priorities. I think it varies kind of as we go down and things kind of start to shift, but kind of 2 of the top 3 are the same. Any questions, or are we surprised by this? Are we rethinking any of these results? Any thoughts on kind of where how the prioritization list developed? All right.
Oh, got one.
Yeah.
Now I have a quiet voice, so I'll come up here. I'm surprised at numbers 2 and 3, quite honestly. Not that they're on the list, but they're that high up, because those tend to be things that at least I would associate with more expense, which I'm not sure that as a town, again, and this goes back to my earlier point about getting, a representative input. I'm not sure if we somehow were able to survey everyone in town that we would come up with this list.
Okay.
So,
thoughts in-house? Anything coming in online?
Nope.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to talk a little bit further about customer experience and service. So number 2 of everyone's priority list. So this is where we're jumping into the next segment, and we're going to focus on how service is currently delivered. And so this will ultimately lead to a second activity. Do we have any questions or any thoughts on the Zoom that we want to address right now that don't
I think,
have to
Matt,
do
I
with
can,
delivery of
we
service?
can answer this question now and just get
Sure.
through this, so.
The next question?
Yep.
So the next question was, did you speak with the town committees in addition to town departments, and did we speak with WestfordCAT?
So to answer this question, we are using these community conversations to invite the town committees and members of WCAT to participate. So as part of the scope, Tecton isn't going to all of our board and committee meetings. We would hope that our board and committee members or those who want to be involved will participate. To Megan's comment, we certainly need to try to get out there more and understand what those are. But we cannot, unfortunately, visit everyone's meetings. I know at the meetings that I have participated in, I'm kind of advertising these working groups and these conversations, but if you are on a board or committee and want to bring this information back to your group, please feel free and we'll take that feedback. Yes.
I'd just like to say, on the recycling commission, we've really appreciated Mike's attendance. We haven't seen that in the past, so thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
For coming to our meetings.
It's a fun group.
Thank you, Chris. All right, I think we're good to move on, Rebecca.
Okay. So, customer experience and service. So, we want to take a step back quickly and just kind of talk about, and I think you've got a little bit of this today, but kind of how service is delivered to the community. Focused a little bit on Town Hall because you have a lot of consolidation of service there at Town Hall currently, but looking across on kind of all of those facility buildings and departments. So kind of we've broken this out into kind of 4 different categories, which is a little bit of a generalization, but there's a few different options when we're talking about town services and how they're delivered. So the first option being kind of that one-point person. This is not what you have today. You know, if you walk into your town hall today, you walk down a hallway and there's multiple windows with multiple points of service. So you can kind of go up to each individual department and kind of speak with them directly. So that would be a multi-point in-person service method. So, you know, and there's pros and cons, and that's what we're going to kind of talk about for each of these. So kind of one model is you walk into a town facility or a town building, and there's kind of a one-point contact person. This person would help facilitate the process, would be able to point you in the right direction, maybe set up meetings with the right personnel, and the space would be available for them to kind of bring those people to you, but it would consolidate kind of that direct in-person contact. You've got the multi-point, which again is probably the most familiar, is what you have today, is where you've got different windows for kind of each department. Again, we'll talk about kind of the pros and cons of each of those. And then there's the, you know, digital component. So providing some services online or looking for efficiencies on, you know, I think the one that comes up the most frequent is if someone's filing a permit or looking for land records, like are there services that can be provided digitally? And then there's always a hybrid model where you take, you know, any combination thereof, and you've got some services that are digital, some services that are both, some services that are only in person, and you kind of create a hybrid combination of in-person, one-on-one kind of contact, or kind of that digital service model. So, pros and cons of each of these. So, from a one point in person, there is a level of efficiency that's provided in doing so. From an architectural standpoint, the first thing that we noticed when we were kind of in town hall is that, you know, although you've got all of the windows kind of on that main corridor, is wide for a reason to allow for all of those different connectivities. We would be able to provide a more efficient use of space if we didn't have as many points of contact that the public would have to access. So it kind of forces those departments kind of into each of those kind of bank of offices along those main corridors. And if we were to reconfigure that, it would allow for us to more efficiently use the space available.
And Rebecca, I just want to so a lot of you are familiar with town hall, a lot of you are familiar with the budgetary challenges. We're thinking really big right now.
Yes, we
So
are.
think that there's no budgetary challenges, what could be in the future? So, so open your mind and kind of think broadly and don't try to constrict yourself to monetary at this point in time.
This is great. Thank you.
Diane had a question.
Sure. Yes, absolutely.
So with that model, wouldn't you have to set the expectation that that point person has to be familiar with
Yes.
everything that goes on?
Yes.
Right? So that role is extremely,
Specialized.
in my opinion, expansive and knowledgeable, and even at that point, I'm assuming there would be questions that person would not be able to answer, so they probably answer 75% of them, you know.
Yeah, I think of this more as a gatekeeper role. There's a lot of routine business that happens that maybe is you need to fill in this form, or you need to make this contact. But I'm thinking about a building permit. When I did my house, I'm a licensed architect, have been for a long time. I know all the people I have to talk to get a building permit. A lot of folks don't. And so, you may go to the building office and say, yes, I'm done. And you got to go to the planning office, you got to go to the wetlands commission, you got to talk to all these different people. The beauty of having a point of contact is they're the gatekeeper. They say, okay, to go through this process, we need to make sure that we touch all these bases. We can set you up, building officials here, maybe we can sit down and have a conversation right now. So yes, they do need to have a more general understanding, but they don't have to be an expert in all things. Because they do have a team of people behind them, a team of experts. So they can tap into those. Honestly, the first time that I really saw this kind of approach happening was actually a town hall that was being developed during COVID. And what they were interested in was not so much efficiency, but they were interested in making sure that people didn't get sick. And so they wanted to have a single point of contact. And then, be able to tap into those other resources. Later on, I saw this in another community where they had taken all of the land use agencies and consolidated them into one place with a single service point. They didn't do town office wide, but they did do the land use agencies consolidation. And so you had a pretty efficient office environment with a single point of public interface. And so I've seen more and more of that over time. For those that are unfamiliar with what they're encountering when they come to town hall, it means you go to one person and you talk to them. I always tell my consultants, I want one person I'm going to call. So when I have good news, I know who to call. And when I need some work done, I know who to call. So that's the idea. Again, they're not experts in everything, but they're the gatekeeper to make sure that you're guided to the right experts.
And you began to allude to some of the potential takeaways or challenges, is that there may be a lack of information, which could result or lead to some duplication of effort if they don't necessarily know where to send you or the right forms that you need to fill out, and it can create bottlenecks because it's one point. It is a gatekeeper truly. So if you've got a queue of people kind of seeking service from different departments, that could create a little bit of a bottleneck if you're seeing frequent use for certain groups over other groups. So you kind of get, it may create some kind of congestion there at that kind of main point of contact. So again, there's pros and cons to each of these, and we are in no way recommending one or another. We just really want to get a sense of how do you like your service? What works right now with your delivery of service? What is challenging? What we'd like to see changed? We really just want to start a conversation about, are there opportunities, again, to Kristen's point, big picture, if we're looking at ultimate solutions, we want to understand these components so that we're not making an assumption that what exists today works perfectly. Maybe there's an opportunity for some changes. Yes, please.
I guess I'm just a little confused how we got to this slide right now. We're talking about different ways to deliver service. Because it seems to me like we started talking about, maintenance of facilities right now, what we might need for facilities over the next 10 years. We were talking about, getting information from all the departments about space needs and all of that, meeting room needs, and now it seems like we're jumping right to potential solutions. And I don't see the data that shows, here's the number of people we need in this department over the next 5 or 10 years to deliver this service. These are the space needs they have. These are the typical meeting needs we have, the number of people. The frequency, has there been any analysis of utilization rates town-wide to try to get an understanding that we'll need one 100-room meeting room, we'll need 3 20-person meeting rooms, something like that, which a typical business would do when they're planning, a big construction project. I guess the last point I would make is that, just an observation, I know there can be some value in just thinking big picture without, any constraints, but there may be a lot of people in town right now that hear to think like that and not consider finances is sort of like having a root canal without Novocaine. It can turn a lot of people off, is I guess what I'm saying. And if we really want to be, draw people into the process, I'm not sure that's the right thing to be talking about right now. Just, again, my opinion.
So I look at this very much as part of the space needs assessment, because it's not only about, how much space do I need for each person to sit and do their job, but how much space do I need to dedicate to the interaction? And until we get a sense of what all the users feel about the utilization of space, we don't have the basis for making those decisions. And all of you folks are users of this facility. And so we're trying to get a little bit of a sense from you about what's going to work for you in the future, because that may well change the minds of the folks in those departments about how they deliver services today. So, yes, there's a lot of study that goes into how we determine size of meeting spaces and number of meeting spaces and, number of workstations. And quite frankly, there's a little bit of this efficiency discussion because, there's a lot of people that sit in each office who are ready to stand up and go to that desk and answer the question. And in many of those departments, they also already rely on the experts behind them in the other offices and the other workstations. So I think understanding what customer expectations are is a big part of the needs assessment process. So I honestly see this as a continuation of that exercise. Any other thoughts?
No, I was going to say the same thing. Okay, so, and we're gonna, the activity that follows this, it starts to ask kind of about kind of your utilization and what you want those spaces to look like. So that is kind of the next step in this process. To Jeff's point, to kind of gather that information so then we can kind of give that comprehensive data dump to the community where, okay, this is all of the space needs kind of across the board that we're seeing either from the departments or from the community. So, multi-point in person. So again, what you have today, which works really well, but it gives you, allows for diverse expertise kind of at your fingertips. It's a familiar experience. It's again, kind of how you're used to functioning today. Although it can create some increased complexity with multiple contact points. We heard a few times from different departments where, they go to one desk and then they've got to send them over to this window and then they've got to send them back. So, it deteriorates that customer experience as they're kind of being, bounced across the hall or upstairs or downstairs from department to department. And it does require clear wayfinding. You're looking up at the signs to read which department window is which department window. They all look the same. So, how does that kind of function from an accessibility standpoint? And it can result in kind of that increased service time. Again, due to that kind of, you've got to meet with multiple departments, meet with multiple people, instead of kind of explaining why you're there and one person kind of giving you the necessary steps, even if they go cross-department. Online, fully digital, it can, in essence, be the most efficient. But with that being said, it's, that is reliant on everyone's comfortability and access to the internet and the digital workspace. So, that's a little bit of a give and take, kind of depending on the makeup of your community. Again, it can reduce kind of the cost and space needs, but you lose some of that personalization, and also it could be harder to resolve complex issues. We were talking internally, if the right forms or the right check boxes aren't in place, you could be spinning your wheels on, digital forms. We're kind of internally talking about kind of our own personal experiences in our own town halls and city halls, and how frequently we go there and what that process is like for each of us. And it was varied kind of across the board. So, Jeff, did you have something to add?
Yeah, as the oldest person in our team, I loathe forms. I'm perfectly digitally capable, but I still hate forms. I'd much rather talk to people, and that's important. So, again, we want to get a sense of what's important, and maybe both answers are correct.
Yeah, and that kind of leads to the, oh, please, no, please.
Yeah, kind of leveraging on the point that Megan made. I think one of the advantages of in-person is when you got somebody for whom English is a second language. The digital can be really difficult, especially like with the land use and stuff. If you start to get into very technical stuff, that's where customer service really becomes, a new paradigm that you can talk, you can help people understand something if it's not their native language.
Sure, good point, great point.
Of course, text speak is like another.
Yeah.
Text speak is a third language, I guess.
That's a great point.
I'll just
Please.
just because there's a relevant comment to this segment in the chat. Noted the large hallway allows. I think there's to your comment about the large hallway creating
Town hall.
efficiency
Yep.
in space. The large hallway allows for a lot of crosstalk and encounters with townsfolk at town hall for other purposes, and so there's the cultural component of how
Sure.
the service is delivered now within the community.
Yeah, that's a great point. Okay. Well received. So from a hybrid standpoint, that would be a combination thereof. I think it gives options so that if some people are more digitally inclined, they can do that. But if folks want that kind of in-person experience, or they enjoy kind of seeing folks in town hall and checking in with people, that is still available. So again, there might be some potential for duplication or possible increase to kind of create both environments and ensure that they're both effectively leveraged. But we've seen a lot of that as well as kind of that hybrid model is look for the efficiencies where it makes sense, but don't kind of wholesale kind of move everything into the digital space. So we are again going to go to a online activity through the same exact form. So you're going to need your phones again. It is going to be a different code, but this one allows you to kind of go through the questions at your own speed. They are less intensive than the first question. They are literally like, well, A, B, or C. They are much more straightforward questions. So that was an in-depth with one prioritization. This is going to be a bit of a quicker kind of survey format. So we want to think about your preferred delivery of service. And again, to Jeff's point, this is all really, through the lens of what space do we need to ensure that we preserve or maintain or provide for the community. Meeting with the department heads, they had thoughts, but from their own experience as citizens or taxpayers, but we want to ensure that we're hearing from you what you want those spaces to look like. What is kind of this public component of these town facilities, and how frequently are you going to them, and are there certain pieces that we need to make sure that we include? So some big picture questions. If you could change one aspect, one thing that immediately comes to mind, probably amount of parking at town hall. What would it be? What would be that one thing you would change? What do you like? What do you not like? What is just working really well and what just really doesn't work? What is inefficient? Okay, so we're going to dive a little deeper and we kind of break them into different topics. So again, this is your QR code and website. It's a different code than last time because it's a different survey. Again, we want to make sure that these are available on the project website, and so that we can continue to kind of weight all of your feedback.
And I just put this in the chat, so menti.com, code 6869323.
I'm gonna again jump to the online platform. And this one should allow you to go through at your own pace. It will not wait for me. So you can kind of just go through the questions. It may make me start it, but I want to make sure everyone has I believe the code, I hope the code stays on the top here.
I put it in the chat as well, so
Okay,
I can
great.
read it to the room if we need to.
Okay.
Did you have a question, Megan?
Just a question. I apologize for getting sick of it. But the first one, this is town hall. And then it asks what departments or services do I
Does
visit
it let
most
you go ahead?
Oh, hit the next button. Hit the next button. There it goes. Okay.
often? Something like that.
So her question is, what she goes to town hall for most often is not on the list. So how should we capture that? It's going to board and commission meetings.
Oh,
Okay.
that's a good, yeah, okay.
So I think we were focusing on departments during the day, right? So
Yeah.
that's a great point. We
That's a
can
great point.
incorporate that.
Yes,
Thank
we
you.
will incorporate that. I would say, does it let
Can
you?
can you edit real quick and make an?
I can
add?
edit, yes, I can edit.
Okay.
So just bear with me for 2 seconds.
We're gonna add a spot where you can input.
Um,
Good point.
That's a great point.
Doing all virtual. This is the only real meeting I've been to for a while.
Okay, so I am just gonna add an option to that question.
Digital. Digital option. A lot of town committees do.
Yeah.
I'll just say board meetings for now, and we'll ensure that's like a comprehensive. Okay, so that should pop up as a part of question 4. Do you guys see that? Okay, great. And you can pick more than one, so this allows you to say, oh, I visit this one, and this one, and this one, but that's it. So you could select 3, 2.
Yeah, that's the Cameron Senior Center.
Yes, yes.
Council on Aging is Cameron Senior Center.
How frequently did she just add something to this one?
I did just add, I added, not the how frequently, I added what departments or services do you use the most often, or, kind of what is your reason for being at town hall?
Somewhere between monthly and rarely. Okay.
So I'm gonna flip through. So there's a list of town hall departments, and then there's gonna be a question after that says, how often do you visit these other, right, yes, these other kind of standalone buildings? So I'm gonna start flipping through, and again, I'm not driving this presentation. You guys can kind of move through at your own speed. So customer experience and frequency of use. This is the first section. That first question is, how frequently do you visit town hall? So we want to understand, is it weekly, monthly, rarely, never? I'm just going to read through them so that you guys can I'm just recapping, adding a little context. Which departments or services do you visit most often? So again, these are focused on services that somewhat exist today at Town Hall. We did include veteran services here as well, although it kind of coexists right now at the senior center. But how often do you visit these departments? Do you visit them enough where and again, you can answer multiples here, like I visit land use and building, and I go to board meetings. If that's your kind of like, those are the top 3, then answer all 3 of those. And then how often do you visit these other town facilities? So, I visit the school department, administrative offices where we are today a lot. I visit, the Council on Aging Senior Center. I visit the police department, or I go up to Public Works to visit highway or engineering or someone like that. No, please do not apologize.
Start to go through it now. I'm at the screen where it's asked. would it be more- I'm at the screen where it's asked, would it be more convenient if any of these standalone departments were co-located within Town Hall? And I'm not really sure how to answer that because on the surface, yes, of course, it would be more convenient.
Sure.
Just like it would be more convenient if it was across the street from my house. But it seems like a very, not the right question to ask.
Okay.
It might be better to list them out and, ask, on a scale of 1 to 5, how
Sure.
inconvenient or convenient is the current layout, I guess.
Okay. For
Because
each of
it
them
seems like this
individually?
question is trying to get an answer that we all want in one place. The way that this question is worded seems like we're trying to anticipate and get the answer we want.
Okay, yeah, that was, I think our intention was to really just try to get a better understanding of if any of these departments, I guess, for example, if you go to Town Hall and you visit these 3 departments, and then you also need to go to the police department, and it would be great, I mean, right now that they exist on the same campus, that's convenient. So I guess to your point, maybe we can expand on this question and get a little bit more feedback on each specific
think
group or department.
Before we get to yours, I think this talks to as well. One of the online questions is when asking about standalone departments being more convenient if co-located at Town Hall, one option is fire. Does this question suggest somehow the fire department would be co-located at Town Hall? How is that feasible or viable considering the new fire station on Boston Road? Well, it could mean that our fire prevention officer holds office hours at the Town Hall from 8 to 4 on Tuesdays, and we have a co-workstation for them. It does not necessarily mean that we'd be moving the fire
Correct.
station. So
Correct.
it's thinking a little bit outside the box of
Yep.
department by department of how can we create workstations that people can come and go to if they're off-site.
Yep, great.
Looking at it, school department, is that just because of school functions or the fact that we also vote there? So should we be thinking about voting when we start looking at visits to school departments? And buildings, we're missing the library.
So when we were talking about, we're not really incorporating voting and precincts into
Okay.
this study at this point in time, so we're talking more about central office.
So it's,
you have to go register a
it's school
student.
department functions, not the fact that the schools are also used for voting.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And we weren't, again, we didn't specifically look at the library.
Okay.
So that's why we didn't, there wouldn't be a component where we'd be recommend changing or moving the library. So that's why it wasn't included, but, point well received.
This part get any worse.
Well, and this is, and I think you're picking up on some of the items that we talk about is that, yes, it would be great, but this site doesn't have the capacity to, accommodate all of those users, all of those staff members, all of the community members. So this was just to try to get kind of that big picture. Is there any real clear overlaps that don't, that could be kind of consolidated?
Rebecca, I have a technical question
Sure.
from an online person. They went through and they think they did the survey wrong, and then they just tried to log back on and do it again, and it won't let them. Is there a way to reset their browser or their system to redo the survey? Or should they wait until the morning and try to do it tomorrow?
They should be able to. So they should be able to reset. Are they? I can't reset the results.
Right.
And if it should allow them to join at any time. So, in theory, it's probably it's recognizing that their browser
Already
like,
did
they
the
entered
survey.
the survey information.
Okay.
The one thing they could try, depending on how technically savvy they are, is if they're in incognito window. So yeah, they could try a different browser, or they could go to an incognito window versus a kind of just traditional internet browsing
Okay.
window, and that should allow them to provide additional feedback.
Okay.
It is anonymous, so
Sure.
I can't verify if the input has been captured, but they could try kind of a different different browser or an incognito window that
Okay.
might reset
Thank you.
their kind of system. But at the very least, maybe close the window and, try again, a new tab or something like that. Also ensure that the program is closed out completely and not
Okay.
running in the background.
Yep.
That would help. All right, so a few of the other questions is kind of flipping through. When you visit town hall, do you typically interact with, a single department? Are you going for one need? Or are you, interacting with multiple departments, kind of bouncing around? Seems like it's very heavy that you're going for one particular need. This is pretty telling when it comes to, that multi-point of service may be working really well because you go to exactly where you need to go, you go to that one person, and then you leave. You don't need to wait in a queue with everyone else who's waiting for different departments. The next section is about convenience and efficiency. So again, when visiting town hall, what aspects are most convenient? So this was an open-ended question. What's working? And then in some of these answers that we're seeing, and again, there's a few here. So having multiple offices in one place, hours, elevator, the parking, which is a little surprising to me, the helpful staff, town clerk, co-location, helpful and friendly town employees, parking, stairs. So I would assume that kind of like direct access, you're right there. There should be more parking, great and friendly guidance, direction from staff members. So that's definitely consistent. Direct communication with department heads and department. Okay, great. So some really good feedback there. The next is what's not working. What aspects are the most challenging when visiting the town facilities? Parking. So maybe yeah, so, and that, sometimes that's the case, right? If it's available, it's great. If it's not available, you're doing loops. It looks like hours of availability, the meeting room space for community gatherings, parking is busy during those times, access from Main Street, Town Hall, so ways that we can kind of provide maybe multi-points of entry that are still accessible. Let's see.
There's a lot of
Talk to-
conversation about hours. I just want to take this opportunity, if those of you who
Sure.
don't know, we just changed our hours for town hall. So we're open late on Tuesdays till 6:30 p.m. and we're closing at 1 o'clock on Friday. So I don't know if they're saying that the hours were not good from our hours 2 weeks ago, since we changed on January 6th, but just another plug that we do now have evening hours for those who may not be able to get to town hall during the day. Yes?
Quick question, on the question that says, would you prefer a single point of contact?
Yep.
Et cetera, is that assuming that you would not be able, even if you knew where to go and what to do, you would not be allowed beyond that single point of contact? You'd still have to go through that? Would that be a mandated process? Not mandated, but you know what I'm saying? Compulsory. Or if I knew where to go, I bypass that single point of contact. Look at everybody's look on their face.
It's a good question.
If you know where you're going, you know where you're going,
Right,
right?
I think both could be possible. I don't,
Just
I
walk
mean,
in with
I
confidence
think
and
we
know
could
what's
talk
going
about the pros and, that may not afford you certain things because we'd still have to provide access to each of those departments. But for those that are kind of looking for that person to kind of guide them and where to go, it does provide that service. So I think we could talk about that.
Later.
Yeah, that could be a later discussion if that is kind of, a little bit of a hybrid model. So I believe that question gives you a yes, no, or unsure.
Yeah, I put unsure.
That's perfect. I was just gonna say maybe unsure is kind of like maybe somewhere in between,
Right.
not 100% in one direction or another. So another question, kind of again working through this segment, if town hall offered more digital or online services, how likely are you to use them? Would you prefer a single point of contact to help you access services? That's what we talked about. It seems like a heavy no from this case. But I would say for this, they're very likely to use digital services. So I think we're gonna have to kind of take all of these and kind of overlap this feedback. I think what's great here, just kind of this initial reaction to these results, is I'm definitely seeing trends. So that's a great. So sometimes we go through these and it's just even across the board, and that is a little bit more challenging for us to kind of create some summary statements about what we heard. Again, being conscientious that we're getting a good cross section of input, because we talk about data a lot, and it's easy to kind of sometimes manipulate those numbers if you're dealing with a small pool of data points. So I think, again, how can we kind of build this, the feedback, and ensuring we're kind of getting a good cross section. So I think we'll build on each of these, again, trying to seek more input online, but then also kind of tailoring some of these questions to the comments raised tonight. And then lastly, there was a small section on design preferences. So how important is it to you that town hall includes these items? Obviously, we were talking internally. It's like, well, yeah, all of them would be great. Yes, all of the above. But we did want to kind of understand is, how important is it? Not at all, very important, somewhere in between. So this is helpful feedback for us to understand kind of where everyone, what is the most important to you, so that we can ensure that we are, again, that will inform our space needs for these areas. And then lastly, when evaluating, is there anything else that you would like the town to consider as a part of this study? One thing I do see is, incorporating a few additional groups, use of some buildings, holistic picture, meeting space. So again, we'll kind of go through each of these pieces and kind of, again, capture all of this feedback. All right. So, if everyone is comfortable, we are about 4 minutes to 9. So I'm going to, again, jump out of the presentation. It's an open survey. You can complete the results as, kind of at your own leisure. I am going to go back into presentation mode. Are there any questions, any additional feedback, future topics? I think we've heard that along the way, but is there any final kind of points or comments from those on online that anyone would like to ensure that we address in future conversations that we haven't already talked about tonight? Please. All of the above, yes.
I just actually put this in my survey, but the main meeting room at Town Hall, where the select board meets, if it's an important topic, a controversial topic, you can get, I've been out there in the hallway kind of waiting to get in or trying to get in.
Yep.
I don't know if there's an answer, but is that being considered?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It's definitely part of the study.
Yeah, should be. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you.
One thing I would like to add, when we were talking about prioritization, one of the things that occurred to me that may be very hard to capture is something's a priority, but it's in pretty good shape. Do we need to make it better versus addressing something that's maybe a lesser priority, but it's really lagging?
Okay.
So some of it is, is prioritization, what's important versus what needs work.
To what extent? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Understood. Great. All right. Any additional thoughts? Any comments online?
There were just 2 other comments online. One asking how many people were participating in the survey. I think we had answered that. There was about 14, but this will be
It jumped up to 18.
jumped up to 18, but this will be maintained online so that more people can be added to it. We want as broad a cross section of the communities we can get. So anybody listening, please get the word out and have other folks participate that weren't able to join us today. There was another comment about maybe clarifying some of the language on some of the questions we were asking. to be a little bit more simplified or in plain English so that it's easier for other folks to participate without misinterpretation.
Okay.
Like similar to the wayfinding question
Yep.
that we got.
Yep.
And then a question just popped up, are we looking at park and rec spaces?
So, want to clarify, we're looking at Road and Bush,
Yes.
which has the recreation office and a facility space there. We are not looking at outside facilities, so we're not looking at fields, ball fields, those types of things. So when we talk about these spaces, it's more office spaces and public meeting indoor spaces, not external facilities.
All right. So upcoming events and how to stay connected. So I kind of led with this at some point in the conversation. Our next community discussion will be in early February on the 5th, again in the evening. This is where we'll talk about those what-if scenarios. We'll do a recap or a summary of all of the needs, kind of what adjacencies the departments feel are the most critical, and kind of a few what if we combined these pieces, what does that look like, and how do they all kind of fit within your current assets. And some of those solutions might be, this building is in really good shape, these departments fit well, there's a few minor modifications, but it's working really well. So we're gonna kind of leave that, we're gonna recommend these improvements, but that's gonna stay the same. And then over here, we might be looking at some consolidation or something of that nature. So there'll be a few of those different options that we'll wanna talk through. We're gonna be doing a similar exercise with the department heads. So we're gonna be doing another workshop with them next week that talk through some of these scenarios and options. So we'll have their feedback as well. So we'll be able to share that with the community. And then again, we've got materials available. We'll have materials available at the annual town meeting in March. And then we will have a subsequent community conversation immediately following that, which you would be able to see kind of the full draft of the master plan at that point. Staying connected continuously. Again, we want to make sure that we are available not only at those conversations, but we have the project website, which I alluded to, westfordmass.gov/facilities assessment, and then we have a project email. So if you have any questions, or if you have thoughts later and you want to make sure that we receive them, many times we will get a few consistent questions, and we'll create kind of a frequently asked questions document, and we will upload that to the website so that we can kind of again capture what folks are curious about, what they're questioning, what they're concerned about, and make sure that everyone is kind of informed and on the same page from kind of the ultimate direction of the master plan. With that, we're at 9:01. So I don't know if you wanted to close it all, but that is all we have for this evening.
One last
Please.
question. The process that we went through tonight, thank you, first of all, really focused on town hall, right? And from my interpretation of this and the needs of town hall and putting examples of ourselves walking into town hall, what our needs be. Is that same process being used for each of the buildings that you're assessing? So you'll go through a similar questions or whatever it may be for each of the other buildings?
Do you want to take it? I have it.
It won't be the same process, but we will be engaging with questions about other departments as well. And I think in the next step, when we start exploring what ifs, I think that's a real opportunity to dig into some of the things that we've heard from other town departments and how they work, and where there might be opportunities for consolidation or efficiency. So, from the standpoint of will we dig into your interaction with those departments, I don't think at this point that was part of our plan, but it could be.
I didn't mean departments, I meant the buildings. So you've got 9, I believe in
Yes.
9, right?
Yep.
So we went through a process for town hall
Yes.
tonight. And many of us could relate and experience that and have needs, and that's understood, and that's great. What about the other buildings, and how do you determine space needs for that other building, and what process do you go through for those other buildings?
Yeah, for those,
Can
a
we
lot of
repeat the
the,
question, Jeff, because I'm having
Okay.
some people online having trouble
So-
hearing from the back.
I'm sorry.
That's okay, yeah.
the question is we focused a lot on town hall tonight, and and the departments that operate out of there. What about the other buildings? And so there's a couple answers to this question. The first part is that we have met with all the staff of all of those buildings and talked about where their future needs are and where their current needs are, where their challenges are. So we have all that documented as part of the study, and that will become a part of the next discussion in the next community conversation.
Okay, thank you.
Rebecca, did you have something else on that?
Say that again?
No? Okay.
No.
Rebecca wasn't listening to me.
I was listening to your response. I was
So Heather's asking, does that include this building? We have assessed that veterans currently is housed here for town facilities, but we are not assessing the Millennium Building. That was not part of this study.
I feel like we're then leaving this big hole because school administration needs a home too.
So we are incorporating school administration. Tecton has reviewed the SMMA study that includes the school administration needs and future. So we are working on that in this study. But Millennium, the building structure, was not part of the investigation.
Because it's deemed temporary. and
Correct.
passes
Yeah.
It's temporary.
Permanently temporary.
Yes.
I guess back to your question. I guess the only thing I would add is that this was we wanted to not go too deep tonight because this is a little bit, okay, let's get our feet wet. There's a lot of different pieces that go into this process. But I think your point is, I hear we want to make sure that we are providing, you the opportunity to give equitable feedback for all of the different buildings. So I think to certain buildings, that might be a more relevant discussion, like, the police department, for example, that station has a greater public interface than maybe the technology building. But we should understand if there's people frequently visiting that, what are the challenges? What works? What doesn't work? So maybe I think it won't be as robust to Jeff's point, but there will be some very pointed questions, and I'd like to heed the feedback on kind of, what was clear and what you felt maybe was leading, and maybe we can kind of tailor the next set of questions for each of those buildings. So maybe there's a handful of them, but it won't be, like the 10 we went through tonight for town hall, kind of for each of those, and kind of specifically kind of focused on what we see as the potential interface there.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
So I want to just thank everyone for coming tonight, everyone for joining online. Again, if you have any feedback, please send it to tmaa@westfordma.gov. That comes right to the town manager's office. We'll share that with Tecton. We're debriefing on, later this week, early next week, continuing this. Want to make it better. If anyone has ideas of how to incorporate more feedback from other voices that we're not hearing, we're always willing to hear that and incorporate that into our program. And again, thank you for coming on this cold January night. Thank you for joining online. And hopefully it worked well for everyone at this point. Thank you. Oh, and if you want a flyer for the next community conversations, we have some handouts here. It's also on the project page, and there's flyers around town. But feel
There's
free to
enough
take
for
one.
3 for everyone that's sitting here tonight. So take them and bring them to your friends.
And if you know a bulletin board to stick them up on, please do that.
That's right.
too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.